Can you imagine? One day you go to a medium and this medium not only connects with your departed loved one, but suddenly takes a sheet of paper, a pencil, and starts sketching something. When she shows it to you, you're stunned because she has made a perfect portrait of your loved one. This incredible and unique ability is possessed by our guest today. Her name is Cote Olavarría, and with her, we are going to talk about psychic art, what psychic art is, and her experiences as an artist and medium. Cote, welcome to The Invisible.
Hello, Cote. How are you? It's been a while. Welcome to this 9th episode of The Invisible. Cote, for those who don't know her, is a very interesting and special person because, from what I know of you, Cote, and have seen your work, besides being a psychic medium, you have a very powerful ability, very much your own, because I know and have met many people in my life who are mediums or claim to be mediums, but someone who does what you do, which is like the work of mediumship connected with art, is something very unique to you. Unique. Tell us, Cote, what does it mean to be a psychic artist?
Well, first of all, thank you also for the welcome, for your words and your kindness, and for the interest in learning a bit more about this work, Esteban. Psychic art, well, in my case, it was born, I believe it was generated and awakened by my path as an artist. I studied graphic design, but I have been dedicated for also, I don't know, more than 15 years to mediumship, but the mediumship always linked with illustration. I don't know what, it's like this topic. I don't know which comes first, the chicken or the egg. I always experience that because I don't know if I am a medium because I am an illustrator or illustration has led me hand in hand with mediumship. It's a bit confusing. Psychic art has to do, in my case, with the ability to portray the energies that are beside me. These can be from your loved ones who have passed on, or perhaps more evolved energies like spiritual guides that may have an angelic origin or a terrestrial origin, etc. How do I draw them? That has been transforming and evolving over the years. At the beginning, as I explained to you before, I received the order to draw, and the spirits would stay for a while, maybe 10 seconds, so that I could portray and draw them.
Even though they were like blinks, Cote, sorry to interrupt you, but I have a question, a doubt. Did you start as a medium and then begin doing this graphic work, or did both start hand in hand?
I think they consciously started hand in hand. At the moment, I decided to take charge of the way I perceived, felt, or the things, voices I heard, or the presences. They were more or less hand in hand because I already had advanced artistic work with illustration, but the subject of illustration and mediumship also appeared somewhat together. I think maybe with a year's difference, but I had the medium abilities from before. It's just that I didn't work on them. I didn't take charge of that. I wasn't aware of how much I could hear, how much I could see, that dreams are also a form of communication. I wasn't clear about that. At the moment when I fully committed, like, I have to do something with this, I'm not going to go crazy because I'm feeling, seeing, and observing many things. I had already traveled the path as an illustrator. So, I think both the artist and the medium appear hand in hand, and the language I started to understand, or the way I began to understand how to draw, how to perceive, because along with the drawing, I receive a lot of information, audible information, sensations. All of that has gone hand in hand with illustration. They go together.
Look, it's interesting what you're telling us, because I've noticed that many mediums integrate this mediumship ability with their skills or with their usual work. For example, someone who is an architect. I know one who is an architect. He is very good at describing physical spaces when he is connected mediumistically. I see that there is a kind of correlation between the training or skills that people have in their daily lives, what they usually do, and also this more psychic or mediumistic part. What do you think about it?
You know, I absolutely agree. I think that there is a correlation, and it's important to observe it, to realize that correlation so that one can take advantage of it. I explain it like this. When I work with illustration, when I receive a text, the publishers that have worked with me, the editors, the authors have always said that my type of illustration has a kind of poetry or is very connected to emotions. They are not literal to the text, but rather a concept that I demonstrate. If I feel, for example, that the text is very loaded with, nostalgia, I will try to make my image show that nostalgia, even if the image is not literal to the text, but it does carry a sense of nostalgia, so that together they create synergy. The text with the image. Why am I explaining this to you? Because when I started on the path of psychic art and received information, I would see an image and had to give it text. It was the other way around now. Before passing the text, I would create the image. Now I would see an image, see a figure, a person, and had to provide a text. And that text is the language I learned from it. I learned to connect through an image that made me feel what I could perceive, what the emotional memory that came to me was. Recently, you talked in a RIR that you did live. I don't know if it was live or a RIR, but you talked about the different ways all mediums have of feeling and how everything is changing, and that today you felt much more intuitive. There is something like a dialogue with the spirit, and I think that's what we aim for, or hopefully we could all aim for that, so that it's not just evidence, which is very important, but not just staying with the proofs, that type of information, and also taking it to a dialogue. The images that are shown to me and that I transfer to paper or a pencil are loaded with that information. People generally say, I forget that you're there, and it becomes as if you're invisible. I already have a dialogue with my loved one, with my spiritual guide. That's what I always aim for, to disappear. Just disappear. And the drawing proposes the same, is to show you your loved one whom I don't know, whom I've never seen, and receive all kinds of information, much of it loaded with messages that are a dialogue of things that the loved one really wants to highlight or emphasize. And all of that is accompanied, is like the frame. I make the portrait of the person, in this case of the spirit, and it gets surrounded with pure information, ending up as the frame. And I deliver that, along not only with evidence, but with a lot of dialogue about it. For me, at least, the portraits and presences have to show the type of personality I'm conversing with. I understand perfectly. It's the fundamental personality.
I understand perfectly. You see, I believe that most people who are mediums usually understand that. Personality structure, like one understands the emotionality, how the person is. And I think it's super important to capture it when one starts a session. Like, I usually start by saying, look, I feel a person with such characteristics, like a generation older than yours, 2, female or male. And if I had to describe them to you, I would describe them like this. This is their personality structure. This is how I feel it. So that generally fits very well when one is doing well. And for that reason, I imagine that you can graph it, translate it into an illustration of the person you are sensing. Now, I'm interested to know, for example, if the illustrations you create in your work in a unique way portray the person as they were here at some point, or in a specific situation, or is it how you perceive them? in the beyond? How does that work?
I've had all kinds. I've had some who appear younger, maybe because it was the stage when they felt most comfortable, or when they were happiest, healthy, or in a very rich stage of life. And I have had others who appear according to the age at which they passed away, but all of them always appear healthy. None, for example, if they had an accident or were perhaps without hair, maybe due to chemotherapy or some health condition. No, they all always appear healthy, absolutely healthy. And they point out what they most want to emphasize, for example, their hair. If for them the topic was their hair, they ask me to please emphasize that in the drawing or in the glasses, or maybe in the freckles or some gesture of how they used to pose. That depends a lot on the personality of the spirit. That's why, for me, it's important to connect with the personality. Others appear leaning on a chair, looking much more laid back, or just like that. Others come dancing and make gestures like this. So, they ask me for some specific types of details to show them in the drawing, and if not, at least to put them on the side, like subtitles of what I'm seeing, of what adorns the drawing. But it depends a lot on that, on the personality. Look, it happened to me with a baby whose portrait I made. The session was with his dad. I did the portrait before when I still did portraits for scheduled sessions. After that, I stopped doing it, and he was a very cute baby. But that's when you start using your head, using reason, logic, which shouldn't be in our field. The little ears were a bit lower. The drawing was done like that. But I used my head and said, no, they have to be a little higher if the ears are a little higher. Well, I fixed it, erased, and raised the ears a little. Later, I admitted it to the parents and apologized because the child was born, lived very briefly, hours. Just hours. And was born with a condition which I can't remember now. It's a syndrome, and it has the ears lower. How incredible. I used my head and erased it and raised them, and I apologized to the father.
That's a problem that sometimes happens to you, that you overthink it, and by trying to improve it, you end up messing it up. Sometimes you have to do things just as you feel them, as you see them. That is, depict it exactly as it is. I think the one who has to filter in that case is the consultant, because, well, I also used to make that mistake a lot, Cote. Hey, Cote, but let's see. You just told me that before you used to make a design, right, an illustration, before the sessions, and now you don't do it anymore. Why did that change?
Because look, on one hand, I got very tired because it was too much pressure. I mean, if we mediums already have the pressure to fulfill, to support in this whole healing process for the consultant, I also had to add the drawing so I could provide a lot of evidence and hold wonderful meetings, and I did so for a long time. And when I showed the drawing, it also generated a lot of anxiety that this session was wonderful. They would tell me, now let's see the drawing please, so it would be like the cherry on top. And there was always a lot of success, I would say, without being a photocopy, because it's understood that I made a very quick portrait. But it happened to me on 2 occasions that was strong for me, where the person, even after receiving a wonderful session full of evidence, found that the drawing resembled them. But not enough. They had expected more. I showed this later to many people out of insecurity. I said, well, maybe it doesn't really look like them. And the person was right. And to the person I showed it to, they would say, but it's the same, it looks a lot like them. I think that anxiety generated by the sessions with included drawings took its toll on me. So I stopped doing it for a while. I also questioned whether what I was offering was right. And then I received the order that I had to start making manifestations. To whom? Wherever I was. If I received the order to draw, I would draw. And that's when spontaneous manifestations with portraits were born. I draw it, receive all the information, and share it on social media. I would say I share 50% of the information or more, because otherwise I get into more intimate topics. And I wait for the family to appear and identify their loved one, their relative. And when they give me the photo and the famous match is made, they send me a photo, they say, "Look, I think it's my grandmother." And I feel that immediate connection, the same energy of the personality that I felt, I am seeing it in the photo. And it generates like a download of information. I share everything I already had plus what I didn't upload to social media, and information keeps coming in. In other words, I do a medium session, but it's free, spontaneous, without a schedule. So there isn't that expectation from the person that the drawing has to be identical to my loved one, but rather I recognize the drawing, I appreciate it, and I gift the information.
Great. So, of course, because I think that suddenly people can have a cognitive bias, a bias when they see the image. Because, I don't know, it often happens that people, when they have their photo taken, say, "Oh, but I don't look like that." Or if they have an idealized image of someone, they will never find it the same. Because there is a bias, let's say, that has to do with the emotion that person carries for them. So there might be, even though everyone without that bias can see one as the same as the other, for the person it won't be the same. It's typical for people to say, "Hey, you look just like such and such artist." The person is like, "Do I look like them?"
Of course, I don't see it even though everyone...
The world finds it similar. The person says, "I don't look like them." Hey, and tell us a bit about that. It was super interesting. Does it ever happen to you that you receive like an instruction from the other side? Like you see an image and you make a sketch or a portrait, I don't know, of someone, but you don't know who it's for, and you publish it, and whoever it resonates with, they basically come forward.
Yes, that's how it works. I receive an order that is to draw exactly as it is. I mean, not even "please draw," or "could you draw?"
It's drawing. Who gives you that order?
Second, my guide, my spiritual guide. My spiritual guide is... Sometimes I've tried to ignore them, but because I'm busy doing other things. But I'm dizzy all the time. I'm dizzy all the time because it's like they're too close and invade my energy field. So I'm always very dizzy. I receive the order like any pencil. If I'm doing it, it could be a marker. The styles can change from this linear to more detailed, depending on the time I dedicate and I would say, the strength or the frequency of the energy that the spirit has. If it is heavier, in terms of presence or more subtle, I will draw it more linearly because I won't be able to present it well. I receive the order and draw the drawing in milliseconds, in which I can see the spirit for a millisecond. I mean, it's a blink, and I have to retain the information from that blink, and the rest is according to the personality I receive or even orders that they give me. I might not be seeing them anymore, and I'm drawing without knowing what will come out. I have to trust what will come out of my hand and the guidance. And suddenly I hear, "No, the hair, don't comb it. Don't do it like that." And where I leave it loose, it was a characteristic, or make it with more volume, or be careful with my eyes, put glasses on. Even if I didn't see them with glasses, suddenly I received orders to put glasses on. And I've suddenly seen spirits that have shown themselves with a mustache. But when I'm going to draw them, they tell me to remove the mustache. So I do. And then people say, he always wanted to remove his mustache and we never let him.
Look, and what do you think is the purpose, in the essence, of this instruction to draw, or as they correct you, what is the final objective of this?
I think it's the same as what you do. What all of us colleagues do is provide the most precise and accurate evidence possible that they are with us, that they haven't gone far away to a distant galaxy and that they coexist or live with us. In other words, to confirm that there is life after this life and that death is just a change of state, that they are there because I have no way. There would be no way to know who they are since I don't have a photo of them. Recently I was talking, and I'll make this parenthesis, I was talking to someone about how there are people who might believe that I might dedicate myself to perhaps looking among my followers, going to their page and saying, this is the mom, she appears. I'm going to draw her and wait for her who might be a frequent follower to identify her. It could be, but I don't do it. It's not appropriate. It could be, but I neither have the time nor the desire, nor is it in my way or style. But if you also add to that all the information from concrete evidence, messages, or about post-mortem situations, which I have, even less way of knowing if I don't even know the family. That leaves. I believe that is a powerful proof that we are not alone. I think it's just about educating, forming, opening minds, and somewhat awakening the consciousness that we are on this path. But it's just an experience, that life goes on and that we are always accompanied.
I agree with you on that. Hey, is there any illustration, any portrait that particularly caught your attention that we could later place the image here? Yes, like to tell the story of this work.
The drawing, I think, has been one of the most similar drawings I've done. It still impressed me because it's almost a true portrait rather than a quick sketch. Now I do a lot more quick sketches. At that time, I did them with much more dedication. And this one is very, very similar. The posture of the jockey, the face, the shape, everything. What caught my attention with that one was that I did the portrait on day X. And now, I don't know if it was a week later, 2 weeks later, the family uploaded the photo and they were followers on Facebook on my Facebook profile. And when it appeared on my homepage, that's how Facebook works. It appeared on my homepage, and the family had uploaded the photo. And I said, well, this photo is the same as the one I did 2 weeks ago. They hadn't even uploaded the photo, so I was the one who confirmed it. I said, that's the photo I did, and I wrote to them. And they were impressed. I was the brother of the girl. The one in the profile was the brother, and he had provided a lot of information, among which he talked about, I don't know, the cinema. He talked about, when I did the drawing, he talked about the cinema and showed me a car, like those, what do you call them, the ones that raced? Oh, from our time. The thing about,
Okay.
that red car, they showed me that one. And then they told me that the boy, of course, was a fan of this speed series that I can't remember the name of now, which is all about cars and racing. And one of them, well, he also passed away. But that impressed me. That was a drawing that impressed me a lot because of the way I got there. And the drawing, not even the photo, hadn't even been uploaded to the networks yet. So, how did the spirit know that this family, either he was going to motivate them, or the family was going to be motivated by something, by intuition, to upload that same photo? Sometime after I made the drawing, I made drawings very, very similar.
Look, and had you uploaded that drawing to your networks before? Before
8 p.m. Look, so there was also a record of it there.
When you uploaded it and when they uploaded it. Yes. Super interesting record. That's great. I remember seeing once a very beautiful portrait you did of a girl sitting. I have a vague memory, like maybe with crossed legs, but it was very realistic. It was very beautiful. Hey Cote, there are
some that are quite powerful, the drawings, others that are very linear. And I say, right, who's gonna recognize it? And they have recognized them. And when they send them, it's the same but I think it influences the time you can dedicate to the quality of the drawing and the personality that the spirit has. There are some who don't like to show themselves, and it's like, look at me quickly, draw me quickly. That also tells me about their personality, so I have to keep asking them for permission. Stay still, don't rush me, because in the meantime, I maintain a dialogue with them. It's not like, here, I leave you the information, and you read it whenever you want, and I leave. They stay there, wander around, review the drawing, and share the information. And there are some who don't like it. Some tell me, you made me with too many dark circles. Another one. And then I says, yeah, hey, please make it a little thinner. That also speaks to their personality and what kind of dialogue I'm going to have with them.
I understand. So deep down, you feel that they maintain the same personality they had here, the way you perceive them like that. Hey, and well, from what I understand, for now you do sessions, but it's not that you make a drawing in each session. So people should know that after watching this video, they shouldn't expect, like, I want a session with her, also to have her make an illustration of my loved one, okay?
Yes. No, I'm not doing sessions with drawing, only spontaneous manifestation. I mean, be attentive to social media for when I upload it to stories or a post and say, please, someone who can identify it or share to identify. More a bit of information of details, like maybe a name, age, or profession, or where I see them depending on what they show me. And I wait. And that's when the match is made. But when the photos arrive, like, I choose which of the photos sent to me is indeed the person. But only there I do the portraits.
Hey, and
Psychology, that too, psychology.
I know that your work in general is in pencil, right? It works like that.
Yes.
That type of graphic work. But I've seen artists, psychics, who basically work with painting. It's the most common. In Brazil, there are several. I don't know if you have any idea. For example, there's one named Luis Alfredo Gasparetto. There's another one named Florencio Atoneto. And that,
Yes.
they are supposed to enter a trance and create their paintings. But it always makes me a little uneasy because they always replicate paintings of famous artists. And it's like they're always taking from famous artists. It makes me a little uneasy. It's quite different from what you do, but do you have any idea about their work?
I feel the same way as you. It also makes me a bit uneasy that it's always famous ones, and that maybe it's not some other artist spirit who also wants to contribute. I think yes, one can ask for assistance from these maybe artists who have already passed on, famous, not famous. When I work with illustration, I do connect with more artistic planes, and I ask the artist for assistance to help me with inspiration, to find maybe in my own way with my hand, but to find the way to express a text. But just like Gasparetto does, no, I haven't seen that. I have tried to do portraits with paintbrush, but I think it's just a matter of time, Look, I'll tell you, I think it's a matter of time and resources, because otherwise I would fill myself with little paintings of many spirits and many spiritual guides. So I mostly use graphite, charcoal, sketchbooks, and I work with that. When I started with psychic art, I did have a guide who was an artist.
Oh, look at that.
I worked with him. He wasn't my main guide, but he presented himself as an artist, and he was the one who would take my hand. Now, he was a character. I must say he was a character with his own personality and structure. And sometimes he would make me do scribbles. And other times, a lot of detail. And he would also pull my ears. And we had like an ego conflict relationship, I would say, between his art and my art. But it was entertaining. And when he decided that I had reached a certain level, he said, I'm leaving, my job here is done. So it was a feeling of abandonment.
Hey, I've noticed in your story that the topic of your guides is very important to you, right? Of your guide or your guides. So far in the interviews we've conducted with mediums on the invisible, guides haven't been mentioned. It would be interesting to delve a little into that and for you to explain how this comes about, how you feel your guides, what your guides are like, if you have a main guide and other guides that support you in certain contexts, if the guides change. Tell us a bit about that from your perspective.
We all have a main guide. Everyone, we are born with a main guide. I named it main guide. Some call it master, others, I don't know, whatever name you want to use. They are more evolved energies, consciousnesses that have already lived perhaps several earthly experiences, the vast majority. So they know very well what we come here to go through. And they accompany us from the very first second we are born. They are with us.
In certain contexts, if the guides are changing, tell us a little about that from your perspective.
We have a main guide. We are all born with a main guide. I named it the main guide. Some call it a teacher, others, I don't know what name you want to use. They are more evolved energies, consciousnesses that have perhaps already lived several earthly experiences, the vast majority. So they know very well what we come here to go through, and they are superior. They accompany us from the very second we are born. They are with us. That's it. So they help us in some way to awaken, to remember, to perhaps truly become aware, to evolve. If I had to define it in some way so that people don't get confused, we could say that it is intuition. And intuition is accompanied by, so that we can understand it, the gathering of all the abilities to listen, feel, perceive, all those clairs come together in intuition. And through it, we receive information that we don't know how to explain, but that speaks to us. I like to call them guides, but that's because I already see them. I see the guides, so I'm not making them up. It's not a creation, because I'm an artist or illustrator and I say I gave a face to a guide. I see it. I see it. If I start talking to a person for a long time and I concentrate, I begin to see the guide as I receive the information.
How do you see the guide? Do you see it inside your head, like when you visualize someone, or do you see it in the physical space?
The way I see is always inside my head with internal eyes, or a memory like that clearly, but it projects like a movie from here outward.
Ah, okay, got it.
I mean, the image is inside, but if I intend it, I can bring it out, and it projects wherever I want, next to you, sitting, or behind you. It puts its hand on your back, but always with my internal eyes.
Ah, perfect.
Just like a movie theater.
Hey, and tell me about this. From what you were telling me, you had guides who were like transitory in your life, like this guide who gave you this sort of introduction on how to do your psychic or artistic work, I mean.
He was with me for about 5 years. I would say about 5 years accompanying me, and he had that personality that you described, quite particular. He also had a certain arrogance, but complete artist.
A complete artist with his ego code and his things.
He would absolutely go out and when the other guides started to appear, some temporary guides that I have, temporary, I say, because they are not my main guide, not the one who is always accompanying me hand in hand, but I have a guide who helps me with automatic writing. And I was saying that those two had a conflict of interest. The artist guide with the automatic writing guide, because she was of German nationality, very structured, and he was like a wild one, wild. So this clash between the two was generated, and I participated and observed the scenes, which caught my attention a lot, that the guides also had their own personalities. So I started to pay more attention to how they communicated. And they told me part of their story, just like a spirit, just like someone's spirit. And then I began to understand that this means that spirits, someone's loved ones, can transform into someone else's guides, depending on what their strengths were and what they come to help with. And if their consciousness is already in a state of evolution or frequency to be a guide.
Yes, that idea is very much from the spirits. The spirits suggest that guides are usually people who have had many experiences after disembodiment and who, instead of deciding to reincarnate, choose to be someone's guide for a while, for example. Of course, that I understand that clearly. I mean, from the spiritualist point of view, from what I see, you view guides as superhumans. They function very much like us. There isn't a big change in general. They have their conflicts among themselves. They have their personality structure, their way, and they interact with each other like we might interact here, from what I see, right? Hey, but have you ever thought, because I've also questioned it, that sometimes the guides we feel could be like ourselves, but in other types of existences that we are connected with ourselves? Like having a double that isn't necessarily going to be like I am, because I understand that I could have taken many forms in my life and I take many forms, so I could be connecting with someone like me, but more advanced.
Look, you've asked me so many questions about the guides. I also put that theory on the table for the guides to explain to me how they work. But what happens is that they have also told me through sessions when I have portrayed them. For example, if you request a service from me, I will draw your guide. Make the portrait, receive information, and ask the guide if you two had any experience in a past life where the guide had their own earthly experience, which maybe they did or did not, being a friend, or the father, or a son, or even a mother. If there was any bond in the earthly experience that he lived, the guide. And if they had any plan or commitment, any contract in this. And it has happened that yes, some have had bonds while others have not. In the case, when they have a bond, the theory you are proposing does not fit. That also shook my ground. But I do believe, this is my theory, I believe that we already have a great energy field, which I call the higher self, the famous higher self. And within that higher self are all our guides and all our experiences. Incarnation after incarnation, they are all there. And that higher self grows as we become more conscious. And with a more evolved soul, it expands, which I call the expansion of consciousness. So, if the guide is also part of us, I believe it is. And I also believe in parallel lines. And I think there is a version here that has a relationship with their guide. And there is a version in another parallel line that also has a relationship perhaps with the same guide, or they are experiencing the bond in another way, or maybe there, the guide is part of their story. Anything is possible. I do believe that guides do participate in they are part of us, and our higher self, of our energetic field.
Sometimes I have come to think that when we talk about past lives, for example, they could be like parallel lives because there is no linear time in other dimensional planes. Therefore, what for us is something that happened 400 years ago, because we perceive it linearly here, could be happening at the same moment. In other words, I could be living a different type of experience in another time, in quotes for us, but it's the same time, the same moment. They are like instances of parallel experiences where reality basically changes.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I believe the same thing. It's just very difficult to explain that to people because we are used to seeing everything linearly. But I think exactly the same, that past lives are not past, they are parallel. We are living the multiple possibilities, perhaps infinite, that our being has in one way, in another way, in another way, at different stages, with different realities that may seem like past or future, but they are all parallel. And for the same reason, I believe that what I do here and decide here, with the help of my guide, supported by my guide, which can be my conscience, also there like Jiminy Cricket talking to me, what I do also somehow defines the parallel lines. It has repercussions. And what they do also has repercussions in life. So, it happened to me with a past life that I experienced due to a situation I was going through, and I asked for assistance. I don't work with the Akashic Records, but for those who do, it's more or less almost the same. I mean, I just set the intention and tell my guide, take me where you need to take me to work on this situation. And they took me to a past life, a parallel life for me. And I worked on that past life through meditation, also making portraits and drawings of everything I saw. And I worked on it consciously as soon as I came out of that semi-trance state. I worked on it consciously here. And the information I obtained there, when applied here, resolved what I had here. And when I went back to the parallel or past life, the conflict had been resolved there. I mean, it was like a feedback loop.
There was like a symbiosis there. Hey, tell me something. Has it ever happened to you that you have a specific concrete conflict? Let's say, it could even be domestic, but from your mind and analytical capacity, you don't see a solution, and you finally turn to your guide, and it gives you a solution you hadn't seen. Has that happened to you?
A lot. Many times. Many. I think our capabilities are limited, but because we haven't developed them further. So there are moments when I feel earthly, like human, living this very limited experience. I don't see a way out or a solution to something. I've learned to let go there. Which may sound very cliche, but my God, how difficult it is to let go of control and say, there's nothing I can do here at this moment. And I don't just rest on my laurels like, well, it is what it is, I'll deal with it. But whenever that happens, I leave it in the hands of a higher energy. Some leave it in the hands of God, others to the angels. I also believe a lot in angels. And I believe not in God as a figure, but as a higher energy. So I leave it to all the more evolved energies. I hand it over to them, and I always trust. I think that if there's something I want to highlight about myself, it's that I have a lot of faith. So I wait. I know that times are divine, and that in chaos, something will always happen that will lead us to a divine order. So I wait. I simply wait and pay a lot of attention. That said, I live the process super consciously, very aware of what I am observing, feeling, paying attention to the way the guides or the universe are speaking to me so that I can find a solution.
So it's key, in essence, to live consciously, to live the moments with attention, and also understand that the times and sometimes that pressure us and our mind, our mental structure. Many times they have nothing to do with the times that go beyond the mental structure. And sometimes things need to settle. They have their own timing, and we sometimes want to push them, perhaps from the desire for something or from anxiety. And that, in essence, is counterproductive because finally, it kind of muddies things, right? These processes should occur more naturally. That's why I also believe the same. Like when one has a conflict, they should let go and allow it to process naturally in the end. But be attentive. Notice that something interesting happened to me. You were talking about guides, and I started with that topic many years ago. No, I had little time in this field, and I'm not going to recount how I got into it, but I got into it perceiving a guide, and basically I did it psychographically. I would write and receive a response. I wouldn't think, oh, meh, and then I would read the response, and that's how I started. Until suddenly, in a psychography, this guy tells me something like, hey, but do it mentally. Like, why are you doing it graphically? And I said, oh, is that possible? Yes. And I started, tatatom, yes. And I would receive a response. But I always had, despite feeling like it was a personality structure very different from mine, I felt a different humor, something else. I always had a hint of doubt. Am I having a dual mind? Or is it just me? You see, I had certain doubts until one day I was in a very complex situation. I was in a really complex situation for me many years ago, and I couldn't find a way out. I couldn't find a way out anywhere. I saw options, but no, nothing fit for me. And I thought a few times about asking Alex, which was the name assigned of my guide. And it was funny because I said, okay, hey, what's your name? It doesn't matter. You will always recognize me. And I said, but if suddenly someone else appears, you will always know me. But okay, if you want to give me a name, call me Alex. And so he remained as Alex. Now, what happened with this character that I didn't want to tell him because I knew or assumed he was going to pull my ear. And I said, I'm not here for anyone to pull my ear, neither Alex nor anyone else. So I didn't turn to him until one day I was driving, and suddenly I was so overwhelmed that I said, I'm going to ask the mental question to see what he tells me. And I do that, and the solution to my problem comes to me. And it was instantaneous. And notice that I was driving the car, and for me it was like a shock because I said, this is the solution. And I hadn't seen it, and I spent a week thinking, going over it, and I didn't see the solution. And when I posted, bam, the solution, just like that, your problem solved. And it was so impactful that I remember I had to pull off the road, parked on the side, and held onto the steering wheel and said, this is real. I was like very in shock. Look at that. That happened to me.
Yet, it happens, yes. You know what? I've been asked many times how to differentiate or identify that it is indeed the message from your guide or this higher voice and not you making it up. And one of the characteristics I always say is that the information comes so quickly that you don't have time it surprises you, like, and where did that come from? Like a solution to a problem. It's a message from the guides or this higher world. It's at the speed of light. At the speed of light. When we talk, you and I have a rhythm to speak. There's a random metric. We have a way of communicating. Theirs is extremely fast. The message arrives, and you can't question it because where did it come from? And it would never have occurred to me to say that to myself or in the way I said it or the way it arrived. It's too fast, it's at the speed of light. That's already one of the pieces of evidence that indeed it's a guide or a higher energy speaking to you. And also, it doesn't embellish. We do tend to, in this idea of believing we have to speak a bit more Zen because we're talking to a guide. The guides laugh at us if they've known us from the very first second. Why would we speak a little more nicely to them if they've heard us speak our whole lives? So if it's very rococo, very, embellished, that's you. It's because you're embellishing a message. But if it's quick, precise, and often, besides a solution, it can also put us in an uncomfortable situation of solve this, take care of this. Those are your guides. The guides are like that.
It's just like it arrives. The whole idea arrives at once. It's like a package of information. Normally when you're developing or explaining or thinking about an idea, you have a sequential structure, right? I start here with this idea, I develop it, and here I finish this idea. This is like take, beginning, end, middle, boom, there it is. You understand?
Hasn't it happened to you that when that occurs, it's a feeling of revelation and you're left it's a very, wow, it's like another level.
Like what happened to me in the car? I had to go out.
to the email.
That used to happen to me, like, where did this come from? And also to rush and quickly jot down the information that came, or the solution to something. Because you say, thank you. Thank you, I hadn't thought of it. I hadn't seen it that way. I define or illustrate it like, those little rays of sun that come through. The clouds when it's raining. Everything is gray. Everything is dark, and suddenly a little ray falls, like the cloud opened up. For me, those are the revelations from the guides. It's like a little ray of light. When you're in a fog, you say, thank you. That's when the information arrived.
Exactly, just like that. What happens to me is that, I don't know if it happens to you, quote, that over time, we, perhaps the way we communicate or perceive, instead of becoming more complex, it simplifies. It's like, before, I used to see images, I had to interpret them, think them over, try to understand and get them into my head. And there comes a point, where one already functions. Very intuitively, it's like, I know what I have to say, this is what I have to say, I'm no longer seeing so many images, I'm talking, and it's like you set yourself aside. You're not even paying much attention to what you're saying, and it flows like that, as if no longer.
Yes. A lot. A few days ago, I was thinking precisely about that. About how my way of receiving has changed a lot. To those who still receive some training or listen to me in meetings, because I'm not teaching classes anymore either, I did teach them the way we started. That is, with receiving a lot. A lot of images, symbols, icons, I don't know, movies. That still happens. It surely happens to us that we receive a bit of that. But that was at the beginning when it was the most powerful. It was a lot, yes. Now, I'm just like you. It's a very intuitive thing of... It's like talking as if they opened a tap and I start talking. Maybe I'm not even seeing that much anymore, but I know what I have to say. And that's when I feel I transform more. I become more. I become invisible. So, your is very good. The title you gave it, because that's where I feel I truly disappear. I become invisible, and the person is talking with their loved one, because it's a dialogue. It's no longer this thing of, look, they're showing me such a thing. Does it make sense to you? That already it's being left behind. Now it's like, I'm seeing a person who is sharing information with me about a loved one, a family member of yours who is in this realm and is telling me that they are like this. In another way, that they have these things, that they have this solution. And it's as if the spirit said, she already knows who I am. She doesn't need more evidence. Now I need to give messages. And they start giving messages.
Does it ever happen to you that you have like incorporation, semi-conscious or conscious? For people who don't know what incorporation is. Incorporation is when a spirit takes over you and you start to dissociate, and it expresses itself through you. So one tends to speak in the first person, and that, has it happened to you? Does it happen to you suddenly?
It has happened to me. Let's see, it happens to me a whole lot with the guides, especially when it's with a video call or one-on-one with the client and the person receiving the guides. That's when it happens to me a lot. And with loved ones, it happened to me. It has happened less. But I had one where it was, I would say, what is the word you used?
Incorporation.
Yes, it has happened to me. Incorporation, right? Yes. Yes, it was very corporeal. So yes, it was a mediumship that was very physical, where I was doing a meditation for myself. I don't usually do passive meditations. At that moment, I was focused on doing a passive meditation, giving myself that little gift. And I felt like I was leaving my body, which I found fascinating because I was free. But it meant that someone took advantage, and I started to feel physically that they were trying to speak through me, with my vocal cords, which complicated things for me because I wanted to go out and travel, to do an astral journey, and I didn't dare to leave because I said, no, I have to come back. If someone needs me, I said, because they won't be able to move my vocal cords alone. So I went back to taking more of my body along with the incorporation, and I was able to write down the messages, but they were all given by my voice, a hoarse voice. They used my vocal cords. It was really intense, because I felt they were taking my face, and my face was completely contracting.
That's right.
It was very, very strange.
Yes. The incorporation happens, at least in my experience, when one lets oneself be carried away by the sensory, and one opens a space that is very much about sensations, and one enters deeply into the sensation. There you can be left a little open, vulnerable to incorporation. And I tell anyone here who is a medium and is watching this, that they need to be careful, because if the incorporation suddenly becomes unconscious, you blank out, you don't know what you're saying or doing. That's why incorporation mediums tend to always have an assistant nearby. So you have to be careful with that.
Be very careful. I agree. I have a very close relative to whom that happens. And they blank out. They blank out. And I've seen it. I mean, I've had to be the assistant and go on writing everything down because they blank out, enter into an absolute trance state, and then their voice transforms. Tears run down from the effort they're making. And then when they come out of that trance state, they're very tired. And ask, what did I say? I don't remember. I don't know what I said. They don't remember anything. Not even when they enter the state.
That's right, exactly. Cote, dear, thank you very much. We have to finish because of the time. I would have been happy to spend much more time with you, but we have a limited time here. I really appreciate you being with us here on this episode of The Invisible. And tell us how people can find you, through which means?
Through the Instagram page, cote.medium. That's where I am. I also have the Facebook page, but I don't manage it much anymore. However, all the history is there too, and like the resume of how I started and how the portraits are made. But everything through the Instagram page. I am offering some services of channeling loved ones and doing message circles, which are smaller groups so that everyone can receive a message. Helping everyone's pocket a little in this time of year.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Cote. And well, thank you for sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and also this topic that is so uncommon, right? Which is what it means to be a psychic artist. That honestly, you are the only psychic artist I personally know so far.
Thank you.
A hug, dear.
Thank you very much, friend. Thanks for the opportunity, and let's keep sharing and raising awareness that this does exist, and, well, we have to take responsibility. We have to do it well, with responsibility like you, very well. So I applaud you, and thank you very much for the opportunity as well.
Thank you, Cote.
My affection and my respect.
Thank you for attending this new episode of The Invisible. And as I always say, if you liked it, give it a like, share it, comment to us. All your comments are always very welcome. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe. That way, the algorithm will allow us to reach many more people with these interesting topics. See you in the next episode.